Welcome to the deep dive. Okay, so today we're going to plunge into this really interesting stack of sources you've brought us.
Hmm.
They're all centered around reconnecting with old friends, like after decades apart, and, how revisiting the past can dig up some, well, surprising secrets.
Right, and not just secrets, but how it can totally reshape how you understand history, both the shared stuff and your own story, and even how you see things right now, today.
Exactly. And the source material here is this narrative about a group of school friends, Jen, Meg, and Georgina. They get drawn back together as adults.
Yeah, and at first it looks like it's all about finding this fourth friend, Rowan, who's missing. That seems to be the urgent thing.
But it turns out pretty quickly that the real urgency is actually about them confronting their own pasts, right? The truths they've kind of buried.
Hidden from each other, maybe even hidden from themselves. It gets complicated fast.
Totally. So you've brought us this material, and our job is to help you navigate it. We'll look at the key relationships, the hidden dynamics, all the twists and turns.
Get ready for quite a story. It covers, changing lives, really complex marriages, money troubles, secrets, lies.
And this search that ends up being way bigger than they first thought, plus a pretty dramatic confrontation that ties it all together.
Okay, let's dive in. We start off in Huntsley, Berkshire. We're seeing it through Jen's eyes.
Right. And she feels like, what does she call it? A dull suburban housewife?
Yeah, exactly. In this town that looks nice on the surface, big houses, nice drives, but she feels totally disconnected.
And that feeling, it's not just the town, is it? It's tied up with her marriage to Ollie, which we gather is already pretty shaky.
Definitely. And she also has this feeling that she looks older than she is, which really says a lot about how she feels inside, stuck.
Yeah, it really highlights that point. Feeling stuck or unhappy now can actually make you feel physically older.
So the thing that brings them back together is this dinner. Jen goes, and boom, all those old school insecurities just flood back.
Oh, yeah. Comparing her sensible shoes to, like, how the school bullies used to look, that feeling of not measuring up has clearly stuck with her.
It's amazing how those early social hierarchies can just linger, isn't it?
It really is.
So the dinner's awkward at first. Then someone remembers Rowan asking, what's a less back in school?
Mm.
That innocence.
A small detail, but it instantly connects them back to that shared past. And Jen needing ID when she was 25, it adds to that feeling of being sort of stalled.
Yeah, like she hasn't quite caught up to adulthood, or maybe adulthood hasn't caught up to her feeling of being worn down. Then there's Meg, or Nutmeg, and Georgina.
And they seem transformed. Meg's grin is still there, but it's described as a lower voltage version.
Lower voltage, yeah. And Georgina, super polished, a successful designer now. But her backstory is pretty rough.
Right, the snobby mother, the family business going bust, getting chucked into the local comprehensive school.
And there's even a mention of her having issues with food back then, which sort of hints that maybe things aren't as perfect now as they seem on the surface.
Good point. These initial glimpses set up such strong contrasts, who they were, who they seem to be now, and you just know there are secrets under the surface.
And crucially, Rowan isn't at the dinner. There's this feeling that something's off without her. They remember her being shy, beautiful, but maybe not knowing it.
Wasted on her, I think they said.
That's it. And it's Rowan's absence and sort of shared worry that kicks things off.
The quest begins, right? Meg gets this message from Rowan. It sounds serious.
Really serious. Dumb medical tests, mentions a lump, says they need to hook up, it's crucial. She's in Ashport, and calls it a matter of life or death.
Wow, okay, that would definitely get you moving. So they start trying to find her.
Yeah, they contact old school people, like Rowan's mom, Mrs. Howard, described as eccentric, something about a broomstick.
Ah, yeah, vivid description. And they go back to the old school grounds, too. Must have been weird.
Yeah, loaded with memories, probably different ones for each of them. They even put an ad in the paper, desperately seeking Rowan.
Feels very old school itself, that approach. And while this search is happening, we learn a bit more about Jen's current life.
Right, her job at the charity shop.
Yeah.
And that detail where she finds Georgina's old bed sheets with the GG initials.
I love that. Finding those sheets years later. It's such a small thing, but it shows how tangled their pasts still are, even randomly.
Totally. And we meet her old flatmate, Helen, who seems like a bit of a sounding board, strong opinions, apparently.
Especially about husband stealing. Yeah. And Helen starting her own business. It just adds another layer showing the different paths they've all taken.
So while they're looking for Rowan on the surface, the story's really starting to peel back the layers on their lives, the ones they've been living for the last 20 years.
Okay, so this is where we really get into the deep dive, unpacking their present lives. Let's stick with Jen first. Her life in Huntsley sounds, well, tough.
Yeah, monotonous. The charity shop job, the difficult divorce from Ollie, that tug-of-war thing over their daughter Chloe,
Hmm.
it all sounds draining.
And Ollie's away a lot. First Tanzania, then suddenly it's London. And the big moment, finding his wedding ring missing in her old honeymoon bag. Ouch.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful symbol, isn't it? Finding it right there. Then he drops the bomb, not going back to Tanzania, working from head office now, and, oh yeah, he's got a new relationship.
With Frances Hutton, described as perfectly nice, which almost makes it worse somehow.
Yeah.
And she's the mother of Chloe's friend.
Exactly. And Jen's reaction is just, she turns it all inward. Sees herself as this tetchy, straight-laced, flannelette pajama-wearing old moaner.
Wow. She really piles the blame on herself, doesn't she? Mentions being pregnant when they got married, only seeing the negatives in Ollie, ignoring the good stuff.
It's a really clear insight into that self-blame cycle that can happen after a breakup, even when, it takes two.
Absolutely. Okay, let's shift to Georgina. On the outside, she's got it made. The designer labeled Giordani, dressing celebrities, bought her house with sweat, tears, and bloody hard work.
Sounds impressive. But her marriage to Aiden, who they knew as Starkey from school, is clearly falling apart. He sounds awful. Beastly, pretentious, and aloof.
Yikes. And Georgina's hiding some major pain, too. The bulimia struggle.
And it's Aiden who actually tells Jen about it first, before Georgina does. Which says a lot about him, doesn't it?
It really does. Weaponizing her struggle like that.
Ugh.
And the story about getting sterilized after that terrible pregnancy experience where Aiden just fell apart and started cheating, it's incredibly raw.
Paints a picture of a marriage that was basically over long before this reunion. And then there's the chauffeur, Max. She starts developing feelings for him.
Interesting. Okay, hold that thought about Max. What about Meg? Her situation sounds the most precarious, financially speaking.
Definitely. Living in a single wide trailer, needing money from family, really struggling. Her son, Zeb, is having trouble at school, too.
But Meg brings a whole different kind of complication with her deceptions. That story about the lump and the medical tests.
Yeah, turns out that was completely made up. A lie.
Wow. And then there's the whole angel messages thing.
Right. Claims her angel talks only to her, gives her messages for people. It's quite something.
Mm-hmm.
Adds this unique, maybe unstable element to her character. And she also talks about a pact with Rowan.
Which is also not true.
Also not true. Another fabrication. And her past drug use gets mentioned, the hash cookies, marijuana. It would suggest a pretty turbulent history.
So she's painted as quite complex, argumentative, catty, likes to twist the knife, but also has this ageless quality.
It's a real mix. Difficult present, messy past, this sort of otherworldly belief system. What you see across all three, really, is how much baggage they're carrying for the past 2 decades. Success, struggles, secrets, lies.
And all that baggage gets pretty explosive when Jen goes back to Ashport with Meg and Georgina. The town feels different, grubbier and poorer.
And Jen feels it triggers something secret and dangerous.
And a lot of that danger seems tied up with Starkey, Aiden, Georgina's husband, the Jen's first love, Titch.
She remembers him so vividly. Sweet and wholesome, the kiss tasting of marijuana, the song You're 16, even the exact date they started going out, September 21st, 1985.
That level of detail, after all those years, it shows how powerful those first love memories can be.
Totally. And when she encounters Aiden again as an adult, the spark is still there, big time.
He tells her his marriage is over, spills the beans about Georgina's bulimia, and then he kisses her.
Yeah. Tells her he'd wanted to do that for so long that seeing her again was killing him.
And Jen is thrown into this massive moral crisis. Coveted her best friend's husband, feels morally inept, like a drug addict needing his attention.
It's a really potent look at how confusing and intoxicating revisiting old feelings can be, especially when the situation is so messy.
Right. And Aiden stirs the pot further by saying he doesn't trust Meg, calls her angel stuff bollocks, wonders if she's snorting angel dust.
He questions her whole story about the pact with Rowan, too, which, casts even more doubt on Meg's motives.
And speaking of Meg, things erupt between her and Jen, don't they? Meg confronts Jen about Aiden.
Oh, yeah. Brutally. Says it's obvious, like a 4th of July firework display. Asks Jen if she really thought he stayed celibate. Calls her naive.
And she even repeats lines she claims Aiden said. That's designed to hurt. Makes Jen's feelings feel suddenly cheap, tawdry, loathsome.
It's a really nasty moment. Shows how those old jealousies can just flare right back up.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, other little threads are popping up. Meg's past connection to some guy, Erwin Beetlebaum.
Yeah, from a party years ago, then email contact. Seems like a side detail for now. But then another name from the past emerges as important for finding Rowan. Tom Doggett?
Their Old English and drama teacher, Mrs. Howard, remembers him. He was in choir with someone they called Bloodwind.
And Jen actually met him again recently, right? At that school reunion party. Danced with him, thought he was charming, maybe coming on to her, but felt it was too soon.
But a brief, seemingly innocent encounter, it becomes incredibly significant later. But the real breakthrough for finding Rowan comes from her art.
Yes. Her paintings are in a gallery, Klingman's Fine Art, dated this year.
That's the key. The gallery owner won't give the address, but agrees to pass on a note.
So Jen heads off to Wales to follow this lead, taking Theo, the dog she's looking after.
And just before she goes, there's that conversation with Holly about needing the house key and finding his ring again in the honeymoon bag. Another little twist of the knife for her personally.
Yeah, the timing is rough. But she gets there. She finds Rowan's cottage in Wales. Rowan's alive, living this artistic life.
But the reunion isn't just relief. It comes with a massive shock. Rowan reveals her ex-husband was Tom Duggan.
They're Tom Dugan, the teacher.
The very same. And Rowan confirms those old rumors about him and Linda Petrotsky, the student, were true, but is much worse.
Oh, no.
She reveals he abused her. Threw things, like a sugar bowl, left bruises, though she says it was nothing that would stand up in court. She lived with him from immersion school, feeling heartsick and lonely, thinking he was saving her.
That is just awful. A whole hidden layer of trauma from their school days they knew nothing about, and he's still after her.
Yes, the threat is current. Dugan is still pursuing her. So finding Rowan turns immediately into protecting Rowan.
So the friends rally. Jen, Meg, Georgina all gather at the cottage, and Ollie shows up too.
Yeah, Ollie joins them, and his presence turns out to be absolutely crucial while he was waiting back at Jen's place.
Oh, and Jen calls Dugan Harryback Tom, and Rowan recognizes that. How did Jen know?
Yeah, that detail's mentioned. Maybe an old nickname or something Jen overheard. Anyway, Ollie does some Googling.
Good old Google.
Finds a newspaper article about a non-molestation order against some guy whose wife was a former student Ashport cop. The stalker's name, Thomas E. Dugan.
Bingo. Confirms he's dangerous, and this is a pattern. Targeting former students.
Exactly. So now they know what they're dealing with. They set a trap. Dugan shows up at the cottage, acting menacingly.
You can't get away from me. There's no one to hear you. Proper villain lines. Chillin'.
But they're there. They jump out, manage to tie him up. They confront him about the abuse, the stalking.
And in the middle of all that chaos, more secrets come out, right? Meg drops another bombshell.
A huge one.
Yeah.
She confesses that Aiden Starkey is actually Zeb's father, not Erwin Beetlebaum.
What? So Beetlebaum wasn't the father?
No. She admits she had a brief thing with Beetlebaum around the same time. Thought maybe it was him initially, and he paid some measly payments for a while. But DNA proved it was Aiden.
Wow. Okay, so Starkey is Zeb's dad, and Meg's not done confessing.
Not quite. She admits the other big lies. There was no pact with Rowan. There was no lump.
She made the whole urgent medical crisis up.
The whole thing, just to manipulate Jen and Georgina into helping her find Rowan because she was worried about her or maybe needed her for the Aiden-Zeb situation.
Unbelievable. So what happens with Dugan?
Once he's tied up and confronted, his bravado collapses. He asks them to untie him, but they stand up to him, threaten legal action if he ever goes near Rowan again.
Good. So the immediate danger is dealt with. The biggest secrets are out. What happens next? How do they process all this?
Well, Jen has this massive realization about her feelings for Aiden. She figures out it wasn't really him she was yearning for now.
What was it then?
It was the feeling of being 16 again. That intensity, that zest for life she felt she'd lost. She confused Aiden with that feeling. And she finally takes some ownership for her part in her own marriage failing, recognizing how negative she'd become.
That's huge personal growth, actually. Understanding that difference between the person and the feeling they represent from your past.
Absolutely. And Georgina opens up too. Admits her marriage to Aiden was just dreadful, that he was cheating constantly, confirms it was him who told Jen about her bulimia.
And she decides what she's doing.
Yes, she's leaving Aiden. And not just leaving him, but leaving him for Max, the chauffeur, someone she actually got to know and connect with, who keeps her calm.
Finding connection in an unexpected place. Interesting. What about Meg, after all the lies?
It's complicated.
Yeah.
But ultimately, despite the manipulation, her actions did lead them to find Rowan and confront Dugan. Jen actually calls her a heroine for life.
A heroine, after all the lying.
Yeah, referencing that idea of heroism being about courage in adversity, self-sacrifice, maybe acting from a position of weakness. It's a nuanced take. Flawed people can still do crucial things.
That's a really interesting perspective on friendship and heroism, not about perfection, but about showing up, maybe.
Exactly. And the whole thing wraps up with this final scene, a Christmas party. It brings everyone together.
Who was there?
Jen, Ollie, Chloe, Helen, Anna Maria, some other friends, Rowan, Georgina, Meg, Zeb, even Fio the dog. A real mix of old and new connections.
Sounds like a sense of healing, reconciliation.
Yeah, the description is new friends, old friends, even bad relationships turned good. And there's a strong hint Ollie and Jen might be finding their way back to each other.
How so?
He says Jen's not so bad, that he's got to know her better recently, and he tells Jen directly, "You're all right now," and gives her a kiss. It feels hopeful but grounded.
Wow. So that final scene really emphasizes how confronting all that past stuff, even the ugliest secrets, can actually lead to rebuilding or finding new paths forward.
Definitely. So that brings us to the end of this deep dive. We went from what looked like a simple search for a missing friend.
Right, and ended up uncovering just layers and layers of secrets, lies, old trauma, and seeing how relationships got completely reshaped by it all.
It really makes you think about old friendships, doesn't it?
Yeah.
How time and truth can test them, but also how that shared history, even the really hard parts, provides this unique, sometimes messy foundation.
Yeah, a foundation for connection and understanding later in life, maybe in ways new friendships can't quite replicate.
So we've unpacked these sources together, hopefully shedding some light on the complex lives of these women.
And as always, we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something to consider based on all this. When we reconnect with people from our past, especially after a long time, are we really finding them as they are now, with all their changes and present lives? Or are we, maybe subconsciously, searching for echoes of the person we used to be when we were with them?
Ooh, that's interesting.
And how much of our current unhappiness, maybe in relationships or just with ourselves, might be tangled up with ghosts of old feelings, unresolved stuff from way back that we haven't really faced until now?